Alright, lads, so today we got some pretty exciting news regarding the next character releasing in Bleach Soul Resonance, that of course being Mayuri, a new Frost-type support character, a character that in my opinion is going to be a must summon for I think majority of the characters in the game, based on the buffs that he is going to supply for the entire team. Now with that in mind, a week ago we did talk about the data mines regarding how Mayuri is going to perform, and from that video, he looked to be an absolutely amazing character, providing really good buffs to the team, specifically element mastery, a technique damage boost, and also a very high attack percentage boost. But like always, those are data mines, and things like that are subject to change. So today, what we do have is a before and after, because we did finally get some official information regarding how Mayuri is going to perform. We don't know specific details, but we now, based on this information, do have a better picture on how Mayuri is going to play, specifically through the buffs that he is going to give. But like mentioned, we are still missing a lot of information regarding the character's core stamp, weapon stamp, his boundary ascension, and also the stamp set that is scheduled to release alongside him. Those could by all means stay the exact same, and we are going to assume that, but also those could change too. So while we do know more about how Mayuri is going to perform when he does release in pretty much 3 days time, we also are still missing information, again regarding those stuff that could change, maybe not, but we're here to look at specifically the changes made to the character's core kit. Not looking at his boundaries, not looking at his core stamp, not looking at his weapon stamp. So with that said, starting off, let's have a look at the core passive effects. Originally, it did mention that when this character casts skills or techniques, he will gain spiritual pressure. And when that spiritual pressure gauge is full, his technique will become super gift. We'll talk about that again in the technique section. But the most important part here was the fact that Mayuri and Nemu's attacks apply poison value. And when poison value is full, it triggers poison damage equal to 30% of Mayuri's attack. When Mayuri triggers poison damage though, the team does gain 1 stack of excitement, which increases all allies' element mastery by 30% for 15 seconds. Specifically though, stacking up to 2 times. So now what has changed in the official information? Well, for starters, they got rid of the Mayuri skill technique description that has now been moved to the character's technique effect. So we still gain spiritual pressure by using techniques, they just don't mention it again in the core passive effects. But as stated here, each time poison is triggered, all characters in the team gain 1 stack of excitement, so that in itself has stayed the same. Excitement, like before, increases their element mastery, and this effect lasts 15 seconds, but now stacks up to 3 times. Additionally, all of Mayuri's damaging attacks apply a certain amount of poison value to the enemies, and when it accumulates to 100, it triggers poison element once, dealing damage to the target. So for the most part, it stayed the exact same, but the big difference now is that it does stack up to 3 times instead of 2 times. And why is that important? Well, if we go back and look at the character's core passive effects, the big thing here is that when the character does gain 1 stack of excitement, he now also does grant an additional 25% attack boost. Unfortunately, we don't have official information regarding the character's weapon stamp and also core stamp. So let's just assume this effect does stay the exact same. It very well could change, like we're seeing changes to the main character's kit. But based on this 25% attack boost beforehand, at free to play, without any boundary ascension, at most you're going to get a 60% element mastery increase and a 50% attack percentage increase. Hypothetically, now through the official kit, we can go up to 90% element mastery and a 75% attack percentage increase, which then gets essentially doubled through the character's boundary ascension, specifically B6. I don't think the values on the core stamp and even that 30% element mastery is going to stay the same. But personally, I do believe, and I'm going to assume here, that through the new official core passive, we are going to be able to provide our team with more attack percentage and more element mastery, which is overall going to be a potential buff to this character when he does release. And what that also means is that there's now more potential with this character again through getting this character at B6. Continuing on with the changes though, next up we have the passive boost effect. So before, his passive boost effect did do the following. Increases his ultimate charge efficiency by 15%. His second passive boost, again these are all at level 1 by the way, increases his own element damage by 30%. And in the third passive effect, increases the efficiency of him applying poison. So pretty decent effects. But now things have changed, more so the third passive boost. So again, passive boost 1 is still the same, ultimate charge efficiency during battle. The numbers again could change, we don't know the exact numbers here, but let's just assume they are going to stay the same at 15%. His second passive increases his element damage But now the third passive does the following. Each time an element status is triggered on an enemy, the critical damage of the character who triggered it increases. This effect lasts 15 seconds and cannot stack. So, assuming passive boost 1 and 2 stays the exact same, cool, already good. The third one, though, does change things, and it's definitely a much better upgrade because increasing how often Mayuri does inflict his poison effect is good, but it's not anything crazy. Now, what this does mean is that if I'm using this character with Gin, if I'm using this character with Kenpachi, Grimmjow in the future, maybe even Soifon, who's potentially upcoming after Mayuri, because she's likely going to inflict burn, right, given her Bankai, and maybe even poison due to her Shikai. What I'm trying to say is that element damage characters are going to be common in the future, and right now is the main focus. So plenty of characters are going to be able to inflict an element status on an enemy, and now they're just gaining a crit damage boost. Mayuri doesn't need to do anything besides just being the team. So that's actually a really good upgrade. I believe that was something that the character did lack in his actual data mined kit, was increasing a character's crit damage. Actually, to be specific, I believe he only gave a crit damage boost through his boundary ascension. So if you were B0, you wouldn't get any crit damage boost. Now, based on his passive boost effect, any character that is able to inflict element damage is now going to get a crit damage boost. The question now is how much crit damage are they going to get? I'm assuming it's going to be a decent amount. Regardless, though, even if it's 20%, it's still better than what his third passive boost effect was originally. Continuing on with the character's kit, let's have a look at the basic attack. For the most part, this stayed the exact same, besides just the wording being changed a little. Whether you're using the character's basic attack or the special attack, which does include Nemu as part of the gameplay, you are going to be building up poison value. But what I personally do like here is the change to, I guess, the wording, as the special attack is now called Masterpiece, referring to Nemu, and I think it's a really sweet title to the attack, especially after what happens in 1000 Year Blood War. Having a look at his technique effect, so what exactly has changed here? So remember, in case you did miss it, Mayuri is going to have 4 different techniques. The first technique, Flesh Tonic, is only used when this character or anyone in the team is not at max HP. If you are at max HP, then you're either going to use Superhuman Drug, Concentrate, or Flesh Bomb. By using this character's technique, you are going to be building up spiritual pressure, and when your spiritual pressure gauge is full, you will then use his enhanced technique, the combined attack. So before, Flesh Tonic would instantly restore the ally's HP for 10 seconds. That, for the most part, stays the exact same. Maybe the wording implies that it's a little bit different. It's restoring HP over time instead of instantly. Either way, it's a HP heal for 10 seconds. His second skill, the Superhuman Drug, before, it would slow enemies in range for 2.5 seconds. And upon a successful cast, enemies do take increased damage for 25 seconds. This seems to be the exact same, inflicting all enemies within range with a slow status and increasing the damage they do take for 25 seconds. His third skill, Mayuri will throw a flesh bomb at the enemies in front of him, dealing damage while also reducing their spiritual pressure and also applying poison value. This also seems to be the exact same, reduces their spiritual pressure, also applies poison value. And then going into the enhanced skill, previously, Mayuri would throw a flesh bomb and a toxic gas at the enemies, dealing damage, reducing their spiritual pressure. Enemies then take more damage and also are applied with poison value. Now, it's a little bit different. Maybe the data mine did originally miss that, but now Mayuri uses both Superhuman Drug Concentrate and also Flesh Bomb. So essentially, it's both skills combined into one, dealing damage to enemies within range, lowering their spiritual pressure, applying poison, now also applying slow status onto the enemies and also taking more damage. So really the only thing that's changed here is that the enhanced skill also does apply slow. Maybe that was always there but was forgotten about. But essentially the enhanced skill is just both skills combined into one. Superhuman Drug Concentrate, slowing them, taking more damage, and Flesh Bomb, lowering their spiritual pressure and applying poison. And then the last change regarding the character is the Bankai. So originally, Ashisogi Jizo descends from above, attacking in a large area in front of him, dealing damage. Then, most importantly, after casting the ultimate, all allies gain 25% increased technique damage for 30 seconds. So this was a good buff, right? Technique damage is great, especially for characters like Gin. I mean, any character benefits from more technique damage. Even Nelio and Kenpachi, likely Grimmjow, especially Grimmjow, and maybe Soifon or any future character, for example, right? Technique is an important way for characters to do damage. But now it has been changed. So for starters, Mayuri activates Bankai and controls the massive golden Ashisogi Jizo to smash down upon enemies, dealing damage and applying poison value. also reducing their element resistance for 30 seconds. And after releasing this skill, the all-skill specialization of all characters in the team is increased by 30 seconds. So what an absolute buff to the character's ultimate. For starters, it applies poison. I think that's something that I might have mentioned in our previous video. I always found it weird that his ultimate didn't apply poison when him applying poison is such a big part of the character's kit. And it would have made no sense if Ashisogi Jizo wasn't able to apply poison. So that in of itself is a good buff, especially for him applying his excitement buffs to the entire team. At the same time, reducing their element resistance is always a good thing, especially in this element damage meta. So that's a new effect that originally wasn't there. And then now, the all skill specialization, what this basically means is that everything gets buffed for 30 seconds. So before, instead of it being technique damage, now it's technique damage, ultimate damage, basic attack damage, special attack damage, battlefield skill damage. It's a universal buff instead of being super specific to technique damage, and that in itself might be the craziest part about this character's kit alongside the core passive change. So ultimately, what we are seeing with this new official version is overall buffs all around to Mayuri's kit. Again, regarding the core passive effect, this one really comes down to whether it's going to be a good change or a bad change. It depends on the attack boost that the core stamp might potentially give, but we don't know that right now. So we can't say whether it's going to be increased or not. Maybe the values are still going to be the exact same, but now you need to get more stacks of excitement, 3 instead of 2. Regardless though, I'm going to assume it's going to be an overall upgrade to his core passive effects. His passive boost 3 effect also got a pretty good upgrade, now offering crit damage. And then most importantly, the ultimate effect now provides more effects for the team. It really does now feel like an ultimate, previously not so much. You're lowering the element resistance, and now you're also getting more damage on everything for 30 seconds. And what this means is that Mayuri has now gone from a must summon to an even better must summon, at least in my opinion. Again, we'll have to wait and see how he does actually perform when the character does release, but for our first limited time support character, I don't think this character is going to disappoint. And what this also might most importantly mean is that he's going to have more usage even outside of an element resistance team. We really might be using this character in exchange for Kisuke in every team going forward, and I'm honestly here for it. His gameplay did look pretty cool. Either way, that's the video for today. Hope you liked and enjoyed it. Let me know what you like to think about these changes, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, and peace.